This is a review on inequalities. And these are greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So to review, I teach this by talking about flip, not flip, and flip flip. And you need to remember the reasons to flip is if you multiply or divide by a negative. So let me show you that. Let's say I have 3 and 7. You know that 3 is less than 7, right? But let me show you what happens if you multiply by a -1 on both these. This becomes a -3 and this becomes a -7. What I want you to remember is on the negative side of the number line, it's kind of backwards. Over here would be 3 and here would be 7, right? And so 3 is smaller than 7. But over here, -7 are reversed. So -3 is actually larger than -7. So notice when we multiplied, and it does work with divide as well, because if we divide it by -1, we get the exact same thing. Now, -3 and -7, your symbol had to flip, so it's no longer a less than, it's a greater than. The second reason to flip is if you want to write the inequality with the variable on the opposite side. So I don't really like my variable to be on the right-hand side on inequalities because then this symbol will not match my graph. So I'm going to flip the F to the left-hand side and the 4 to the right-hand side. And think about it. When you were in grade school, they always talked about that as the alligator mouth. It wanted to eat the F. Well, it still wants to eat the F. We didn't change anything about it. It's just that the F moved to the other side. So then that flips again. And now when we graph it, remember, you're going to fill it in. Why do we fill it in? Because of the underline. That means 4 actually works. And it actually matches the direction of my symbol. So if I graph this now, it would be at 4. 4 works because it's filled in, and everything bigger than 4 works, greater than or equal to 4. So let's go analyze a few problems. I look at this first inequality, 3 plus 7e is less than 31, and I analyze it. Am I going to have to multiply or divide by a negative? No, I'll be dividing by a +7. And is the variable where I like it on the left-hand side? Yeah, so this is what I consider a not flip. Now I'm going to go solve it the exact same way I would solve anything. So I'll solve this one in Rainbow. There was an E, they took times 7, they added 3, and they got 31. So we're going to subtract 3, and we're going to divide by 7, making sure you hit equals on your calculator. So 31 minus 3 is 28. 28 divided by 7 is 4. And then I need to remember I didn't flip it, so that is my symbol. It's less than. To review, at 4 on a number line. This time it's not filled in because there's no underline on it, so 4 doesn't actually work. 4 is where we kind of make a break and say everything on one side of or the other of 4 works. Everything to the left of 4 works, but 4 actually doesn't work because E needs to be less than 4. Let's analyze this problem. The variable is on the wrong side as far as I'm concerned, so there's a flip. And when I do leave change opposite, I will be dividing by a -7. So this is a flip flip. So let's talk about what a flip flip does. Flip flip means the symbol is going to stay exactly the same, but now the C is going to be on the left-hand side. Okay, so we're going to divide by a negative, and we're going to flip that C onto the left-hand side. So we have a flip flip. I can already show you the graph is going to be filled in because of this underline right here, and it's going to be headed to the right because we're talking about all things greater than or equal to some number. We just don't know that number yet. So this time I'll solve it with cancellation. They did this, then this, so let me undo it by subtracting 2 from both sides, which gets me 3 is greater than or equal to -7c because those cancel out. Now I'm dividing by a negative. When I divide by a negative, I have to flip the symbol. So that flips to a less than or equal to, and now I have -3/7 is less than or equal to C because those cancel out. And I don't want to write it that way, so I'm now flipping my entire thing to C is greater than or equal to -3/7. Remember, it wanted to eat to C, it still wants to eat to C. And now we have it graphed, so now we know that this point on the number line is -3/7. It works because it's filled in, and everything bigger than it works, greater than or equal to. So analyze this one. I'm going to do leave change opposite. I should say, when do you decide on flip, not flip, 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 is after you've done all the simplification. So you should do leave change opposite, distributive property, combine like terms, and if you have variables on both sides, you want to get all your variables on one side and then make that decision. Is this a flip, not flip, or flip, flip? Well, I like where the variable's at, so that's not a flip, but I am going to be dividing by a -5, so this is a flip. So I can already tell you right now it's not going to be less than, it's going to be greater than. P is going to be greater than something. We can already get our graph set up. I know it's going to be not filled in because there's no underline on that. It's going to be headed to the right. Just don't know this number yet. And so now this one I'll solve in Rainbow again. There was a P. They took times -5. They added 9 and they got -8. So we're going to subtract 9 to undo what they did and divide by -5 to undo what they did and make sure we hit equals. So I'm doing it by hand, so we'll do leaf change opposite. Just have the same sign, so I add and use that same sign. Now I'm dividing -17 by -5. That's two negatives in a division problem, so it's positive. And I have 3 2/5. Remembering that I flipped this one time, so it's not less than, it's greater than. So now I know this is a 3 2/5 on the number line. Greater than 3 2/5 works, so 3 3/5 or 3.43 or 5 or 700 work. Anything to the right-hand side of 3 2/5. So let's analyze this one. I do not like where the variable's at. It's on the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side, so there's a flip. But I won't have to multiply or divide by a negative, so this is just going to be a flip as well. So it will not be a less than or equal to, it will be a greater than or equal to. I can already fill that in. It's going to be filled in because of the underline. It's going to be headed to the right. We just have to find the number on the number line that is our answer. So let's do that problem. This time we'll do it in cancellation. They did this, then this, so I'm going to undo that by subtracting 9. Those cancel out, so I'm left with W divided by 3. Leaf change opposite, and I get -5. Now to undo this, I'm going to multiply by 3 on both sides. And I get -15, because that's one negative in that problem. These cancel out. Now I've got my answer, I just don't like the way it's written because it won't match my graph. Do you see how this looks like a less than or equal to? And I've graphed a greater than or equal to? So that confuses people, so I always have them flip it, and that's why we talk about the flip. The flip will be the W flips over here and -15, and that's why the symbol flipped as well. So we have W is greater than or equal to -15, and there's your graph. Here's one that shows you we're not really ready to do the flip, not flip, 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 because this looks like it's a -2k right here, right? But when I go ahead and do my distributive property, I have a -3 times a 3, which is -9, so that's one negative. And then I have a -3 times a -2k, which actually becomes a +6k, greater than 10. Now this is why you want to do all your simplification before you do flip, not flip, flip, flip. Because now I like where the variable's at. I'll be dividing by a positive. This is a not flip. So it's going to end up being greater than, which is exactly what it is right now. So not filled in, headed to the right. We just don't know what the number is on the number line that it goes over. So do this one with Rainbow real quickly. There was a K that they took times 6 and added -9 to get 10. So I'm going to add a +9 to undo what they did and divide by 6 to undo what they did. So I have 10 plus 9, which is 19, and then I divide it by 6. So that goes in there 3 times with one remainder, so it's 3 1/6. So K is greater than 3 1/6. All right, last problem. This is when you have variables on both sides. You want to get all your variables on one side. So let me go ahead and do the steps. Leaf change opposite. I don't have any distributive property. I don't have anything that I can combine at this point because the J's are on opposite sides and the constants are on opposite sides. So I'm going to subtract one set of variables. And when I'm dealing with an inequality, I always know I want my variable on the left-hand side anyway, so I'm going to subtract 5j from both sides. Those cancel out, and I'm left with a -11 over here. And then 8j minus 5j is 3j plus -17. So I'm now simplified. Now I can look over and determine flip, not flip, flip, flip. I like where the variable's at. I'll be dividing by a positive. This is a not flip. Okay, so I'll solve this with cancellation. They did this, then this. So I'm going to undo that by adding 17 to both sides. Those cancel out. I'm left with 3j is greater than or equal to positive 6. I divide by 3, and I get j is greater than or equal to 2. Did not have to flip anything. Again, at 2 on a number line, it would be filled in because of this underline right here, and everything to the right of it works also. So 2 works, and 2.5, and 3, and 3.77, and 4 and 1/13, and 745. They all work. Anything to the right of 2 works, and this time 2 works also.